to start from Carlos' material out of
Okay. Thanks. All right. Well, for people joining us, we are continuing our design review of Tabular. And where are we starting?
Out of core tabular with Carlos' material.
Okay.
Okay, just before you start, some of the things I wrote are not correct because we haven't had build since Monday, but everything, all the examples work. But I'll tell you what is a false claim on your build.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so normally this relational database would be referring to a URL. Is that correct? Or URI of some kind? This is just happens to be SQLite, which is local.
Yeah.
Does literally any relational database object work now?
Yeah.
Or are there some nice?
I mean, I haven't tested everything, but under the hood,
but in principle,
it uses the same stuff as entities.
So we could connect to some corporate transactional database, and we could do this. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Has anybody talked to the corporate analytics team about this?
Not since the days of entities. I remember connecting to the bugs database, which is fairly transactional.
Okay. Well, I mean, can we, our node would be a good person to ask about that now. It'd be good to test this out. Okay, Can I actually run this?
Yep.
Do I run the initialization?
I haven't put anything in.
I'd say no.
No.
It belongs to the previous section.
Okay, what's the delay here?
I think it's just your kernel was fresh. It's loading the packlet. If you do it again, it should take like half a second.
Actually, let me just check one thing. I'm just worried about.
Yeah, why is Tabular blue?
Yeah, the problem is that I have my thing set to use. Don't
wait, so that's a new. Okay, that's very concerning.
Right. If somebody can remind me at the end to change it back again, because I'm doing a bunch of stuff with GPUs and things for which I need to be doing that. Okay, let's try it again.
Try again.
Okay, but there's initialization, but other than that, it's not like we need to have a progress monitor.
No, I mean, if you are connecting to a database that has 100 columns, then maybe yes, but it would be a little bit complicated to get the progress.
That second argument, why is that a symbol?
Okay, so that's the thing I wrote up there. Basically, this is how experimentally Rob has set the API up, so I can put everything in the database's packlet. It's set up as an app value. I cannot do anything about it right now. The last argument has to be something like relational database or dataset for the dataset backed. So, I mean, it's going to change. It's not.
It's just going to be removed,
it's convenient.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Right now it's convenient.
That's because you can't drill for up values there.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this thing that says, what is the offices thing? Is that a table?
It's one of the tables. It's one of the tables.
Is this the way that we want to specify a subtable? I thought that we had a way of specifying that using the relational database syntax.
No, I mean, in relational database, if you do stuff with sub values, you get properties out. It does evaluate properties of those. But yeah, I mean,
I think you're thinking of the data connector or whatever it's called. That one is specify the table, but that's a different thing, I think.
How should you specify? So this looks like a hokey way to specify a table.
I mean, what else do you propose? I mean, it could be a rule, but it feels like rule abuse.
Yeah.
I do think that like this is where Tabular of data connection object can kind of bridge that gap between where is the stuff and out of core, but I haven't worked that out with Carlo yet.
Yeah, what's the difference between the schema offices and offices schema?
No, I mean, the real full form is basically the third one. This is what it normalizes to. But I got tired of typing relational databases in full every time, and so I made those shortcuts. But I'm not married to any of these It's just that it was the fastest thing to type, given the constraint of what.
I think that an arrow will be better. I think this list is super confusing, and the fact that you can do it in both orders is just like even more confusing.
Yeah, I can do that.
I mean, it looks it is slight rule abuse, but it is, you know, at least it looks vaguely like the association.
Okay. I mean, once Rob comes back and we are freed from the constraints of what we have right now, we can think of something, you know.
Well, let's just decide what we want to do, and then we'll do it when we can.
Yeah.
Okay, now,
could also be 2 arguments for all I care.
Well, I don't think that's a good idea. What else is the second argument of tabular used for?
So far, nothing.
Well, tabular usually use 2 tabular, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what are the constructors for tabular that, you know, that use tabular instead of 2 tabular?
If you just do tabular of a matrix, does it work?
I think it will pick something up for you, like in terms of what is wrong. I mean, for identity matrix, it's.
What the heck is that? That's a bug. Okay,
Yeah,
this has many bugs. Okay, what's this ridiculous thing? Okay, see that?
Yep.
With somebody's, we can always use scientific notation. No, we can't. Okay, and that's obviously a bug there.
Mm-hmm.
But so to me, I think, you know, tabular of relational database arrows, you know, may be okay, but what's this? And what's the generalization of that?
I mean, so in general, what Rob has set up is that there is an API function. This is called, sorry, it's not an API function in the sense of API function, the symbol, but like it's a function I attach up values to that validates the tabular stuff and returns an association that gets stuffed into the first argument of tabular. So if you look at like the input form,
that's the implementation. I want to know what the functional design is. Okay,
but
what is this supposed to be? If this was if this was like an identity matrix, is there an association version of this that can have that identity matrix in it?
I think so.
I think this works very much like structure arrays. So there is a symbol there which effectively changes the meaning of the whole thing. So this tabular with second argument relational databases is saying the first argument is only about relational databases. It's not the general syntax of
I thought
tabular.
that the second argument is just temporary implementation.
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to be there.
Oh, but Steven, look at the input form of the identity matrix. It gets turned into a big association where it says the backend is the Wolfram kernel and the backend data is a big association that contains a number of things. So it gets like you see the column tables and the tabular column and so on and so forth.
Okay, so this is not end user accessible. This stuff here,
right?
This is like
so what?
Yeah.
One question is there logic for why this would be in tabular and not 2 tabular?
Well, the construction could be into tabular. Then the output will be tabular.
Right. Which is how all the other constructors of tabular, as far as I know, like all the other ones that users are supposed to use, they use 2 tabular. I thought.
Well, I think that the point is that 2 tabular gives you lots of control. Tabular on its own is just, here's a thing, you know, it's supposed to be interpreted as tabular.
Right.
So the question is, yeah.
Well, I don't know.
What's the input form of one of, you know, of %2?
It's fairly similar. You know, it says relational database, and then it has pretty much.
The fact that it evaluates is maybe another hint that maybe it should be in 2 tabular. I would argue.
Yep.
But it will be also in 2 tabular. But in general, we have something that says that basically, if there is an obvious conversion, you can also do it in tabular. 2 tabular is to specify options and stuff like that.
Oh.
I think I
Yeah.
agree. This feels better into Tabular because to Tabular
Yeah.
requires the second.
Yeah, there is no second argument in Tabular, right? So
Right, but this second argument's fake, right? Like
Exactly.
this is just
No,
a
but
hack.
that second argument is going to go away anyway.
Yeah.
I know. We're all saying the same thing. It's a fake second argument. So the question is, things that are very direct, like tabular of identity matrix, they can just work. Tabular of relational database, if it is obvious what that should mean, is okay too. But if it has multiple tables, then we can't do it that way.
It will always have multiple tables, basically.
Well,
Right.
okay. In that case, we could have maybe one syntax, which is, relational database arrow table name. And that would be a thing that can be put directly into Tabular. And anything more elaborate than that has to go into Tabular.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's move on.
Yeah.
Current box. Look, I don't want to hear about all this detail until Rob comes back from
Well,
vacation.
yeah, sure, okay. But
Stupid.
the thing is, if I was able to design this from scratch, this would say something like, it has 10 columns and maybe under a flipper, these are the names of the columns. I never
Great.
care about
Okay, fine.
what the number
That's
of
great.
rows
That's
are.
what
Yeah.
should happen.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Wait, is there a reason you can't show like the first couple of rows or something like that?
Yeah, I know that. Okay, so there are a few reasons. If it's transactional and it's fast changing, it might be a lie. Secondly, it's a remote database. It might take a couple of seconds, and I think we've been bitten before by putting too much evaluation into the boxes. Think single entities.
Fine. So, but why
Fine.
don't you leave
Yeah.
the line out? Don't say missing, not available.
Well, I can't right now. That's the only reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a detail. That's
Yeah.
okay. Fine. So we're just defining what it should be like. We're not defining what you can do today.
Sure.
Okay. So
Well,
are we going to leave
I
it out, or are we
mean,
going to put a
but-
dash here?
I don't know. It's not obvious to me. That's useful information.
How
I mean,
many rows?
Is it always
That's count of the number of rows, right?
right?
Yeah, but that always requires a query,
but that's a fast query.
not necessarily.
Not always. I've had databases where it's actually shockingly slow.
Really depends on how the database is set up, how far it is, and the other thing is that thing right now is a simple table, but if there's a complex filter, you might have to scan the whole table before you can say how many there are.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. Okay.
If you for example evaluate the select example just below, that
Yeah.
thing also returns the same boxes. Now, to know how many offices that have country equals to USA, depending on how the database is set up, you might have to scan a terabyte
Okay,
of
look,
data before you
okay,
can give the answer.
okay, hold on. It's clearly useful to know the number of rows. If it turns out that it's difficult to know the number of rows, we should punt on it. But is it possible to do a query with a timeout?
So there is a philosophical problem in doing a query with a timeout. That is, first of all, so what would the timeout be? Like, how long is it acceptable to wait in make boxes before we can get a result?
Half a second.
Okay, then likely nothing will ever come out of that, because it takes a while to compile the query before you launch it. And secondly,
Okay, well, tell me how long you need. 1 second? What do you need?
I think 1 second is, if the database is local, we'll get a result most of the
Okay.
times, but it really depends on what's underneath, because there
Okay, I
might
got
be
it. So if we could do that, and then if we can't get it, we just put a dash there. That seems fine to me.
But what about the fact, like, what if you're pointing to a database where the number of rows is changing every millisecond? Like, do we want to have a lie in
I think
there
that's fine.
Yeah,
If
I
you
think
say
it's fine,
now,
too.
it also changes every millisecond, right? Or if you say astro position of something,
Yeah,
it
right.
changes every millisecond. But
It's fine.
Yeah,
To know
no,
that,
but I do think that there's some. I don't know. Running it with a timeout does seem kind of bad though, because it's going to mean you run it 5 times, and sometimes it says the number, and sometimes it gives a dash, and it's like that would be super weird.
yeah.
Honestly, I think it's better for just to not say.
Well,
Yeah,
what
I
about
mean, especially
having
in
it be
these cases
dynamic?
where it's lazy.
Yeah, could it be dynamic? And come in when it knows it?
Well,
I
what
mean,
if what if you're rate limited, and like for some reason you don't want to
You know what?
perform
If it ends
queries.
up that it can't get it and it puts a dash there, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah,
But
but
if
what
we
I'm
can
asking
get
you,
it, we
what I'm
should
asking
get
you
it.
is like imagine you are connecting to something that you're paying for some credits, and like every time you perform a query, there's a counter that goes down. You don't want your make boxes code to perform a query without you knowing.
Don't worry about it. If you're using the data, the query that asks you how many elements there are is not an important query.
Well, actually, like it can be. Like I've seen things with like some of these what is it, data lake things, or like I think even Google BigQuery does this, where you can set it up so that you're writing SQL looking queries, but it's actually backed by it's scanning huge amounts of just like JSON
Like
files and
grep
stuff like
or
that.
something. It's actually running grep.
Yeah, it's actually running grep. So I did an example on, I think it was like AWS Athena or something like that, where I was just running length, and it cost me like $3 because it went through a terabyte of compressed JSON files. It took it a minute. So there can be weird situations like this.
Okay. Well, look, if we can find it easily, we should find it. The only question is, do we say rows and then put a dash or say undetermined or something, or do we simply leave out that line?
I would leave it out. I mean, I don't think it's like
but if we can get it, we get it. If we get it easily, we get it.
But I don't think we should give users the impression that we can get it, because in full generality, it's the wrong question to ask.
I mean, if we can get it and it's a small SQLite database, we should put it in there because it's useful. Right? If it's some giant terabyte, petabyte database stored in grep format or something, then we don't put it in there. But if we can easily get it, if we know it's a database of a type where we can easily get it, we should get it.
What if we leave it out if the database is a server? Like if it's remote, there's no hope anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. I think it's fine. That's fine. Okay. But I think having column names and things will be very nice. All right, let's move on. Okay, I don't need to see this detail about Rob not having this stuff yet. I mean, what is this? I don't understand. What are you showing me here?
So the thing is, you can't use normal to get the data in memory. So I'm using Tabular.
Why?
Because it's not set up to I can't plug into it.
Okay, but we obviously need to be able to do that.
Of course. But
okay, fine.
But is normal? No, but hold on. But normal also should do something different, right? Because normal takes a tabular and turns it into, I forget what, a list of associations.
Yep.
This is taking a tabular and returning a new tabular where the data has been imported, right?
Yes.
So I don't think normal of a tabular should ever return another tabular. It should always return a list of associations.
I agree.
Yeah, but then I think we need something that has an operator form, because all of this stuff really begs for / postfix stuff. Like
hold on. Okay, several points. First of all, normal returns the list of associations, something which is not a tabular. Period. End of story. The issue is you need an operation that takes an out of core tabular and brings it in core, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What about import?
Import takes a path, not a tabular. I'm sorry.
Why not to tabular?
Oh, fair enough. Well,
you mean single argument to tabular, Jose?
Yeah, exactly. It's some sort of normalizer of tabulars.
I mean, does that normal thing there actually work right now?
Yes, it does.
I think it says 2 in memory.
Can we apply that, or unless it's bigger than I think it is? Can we apply that to our example database just to see it work?
Yeah.
But actually, then that makes a lot of sense with what you were saying, Jose, because, right, it sounds like TrueTabular already has stuff where based on the first argument, it'll automatically pick, the second argument. So it could just be if you give it
what is this some kind of garbage here? Multiplied phone numbers? Come on, guys.
Actually,
who's dealing with the formatting of this?
How old is your build? Because the multiplied phone numbers, I've seen them work properly. Weird. I use the same, and I never saw those tabular column people.
Meet multiplied phone numbers.
Yeah, I mean, also the fact that it can't find the template box style. There's something funky going on. We'll
okay, no matter.
It's the prototype build. We'll figure it out at some point.
Yep. Okay. Okay. So we just need something that brings this in memory. Do we ever need the inverse operation of pushing it out, exporting it to something? I mean, we want a cloud deploy, clearly, for these things.
Well, I was actually going to say, I mean, having export for SQLite at least seems like it would be worth having. But I think anything else becomes much more complicated because now it's like I'm launching a server that I now have to manage and all that.
Okay, but export to SQLite should just work with export.
Well,
right?
You need to give the table a name at the very least.
Okay.
Can't it infer that from the tabular?
No.
Because the tabular is just one table.
But
it could be an option. It could be like an option to export. It has a default table name. It's just called tabular, and otherwise you get an option that says table name arrow foo or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm also wondering, in the case of tabular of a relational database, if there is only one table in the relational database, why not just use it? Because then that would be a round trip mechanism for that.
Sure.
Oh, well, actually, arguably, you could also do export of an association of tabulars if you want to, give many tables.
A good point.
Yeah. The only thing that's worrying me about SQLite is that it doesn't have very good, like it doesn't support dates, for example. So
who cares? If you're exporting to that, you're exporting to that. You get what you get.
Right. That doesn't preclude, I mean, is there a better, not right? Is there a better file-based database we could use? I mean, I'm not an expert in this field, but right, if there's more richer.
No, there isn't.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So let's discuss what is the mechanism to get a tabular into memory. Okay. I'm not that keen on two tabular with one argument doing it. Seems kind of arbitrary.
Well, two tabular with one argument already takes all kinds of things and turns them into tabulars.
Right, but it takes that one argument. It doesn't turn it into an operator form.
But it's not an operator form. It's not.
No,
an
it wouldn't
form.
be.
It's just
the operator
tabular.
form would just be two tabular.
Oh, you're saying two tabular of a out of core.
Right.
Would turn it into an in-core tabular.
I think the only things that breaks is it sounds like none of the other two tabular usages take a tabular in the first argument. They all take something else. And even if any did take a tabular in the first argument, it's maybe a little weird that it's looking not just at the head, but it's looking to see that it's an out of core tabular.
Well, look, here's the thing. We could just define.
I think that we're going to have tabular and perhaps two tabular to set options. Let's say you want to change an option for an object. Then tabular setting that option or two tabular setting that option, I think should both work.
All right, I agree. So, but look, two tabular with a tabular as its first argument, the canonical form of tabular could be an in-core tabular. And if that first argument is an in-core tabular, then it's a no-op if there are no options given. Does that make sense?
Well, no, but it sounds like the problem is that if I just want to set my column names or something by changing some options, and I use two tabular and I give it an out of core one, then we're in trouble. Although maybe I can't change that option.
You can't do that. You can't change those options for out of core.
But there might be other options that you can change. I don't know.
Well, are there? Can somebody answer that?
I mean, you could change the names of the columns. Like we put a shim around them. It's fine. Here's
the thing. Sorry, formatting. There might be formatting options.
Yeah, that won't work.
Okay,
but
so that's the reason why we
can't.
Tabular
is like what if you want to set something to be column keys? I don't know. Some of those options might work. I think you have a good point, Christopher.
Okay, but the main point is if that's the case, if any of those options work, then we can't use the hack of saying that to tabular with the first argument of out of core will make it in core.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless we require that option thing, you can only do it with tabular and not to tabular. But it sounds like that's maybe would be
I'm kind of beginning
confusing.
to think we might just need a function that does this. I mean, what is this? This is making it too local tabular, basically.
Another possibility is the second argument of normal. So normal allows you what to normalize with the second argument.
Well, we haven't really properly documented it, and it's
kind of a hack.
It is documented. There are like 15, 20 different things.
What?
But it also doesn't have an operator form, so
yes, that's true.
I mean, is there a reason that to tabular with a second argument shouldn't work? I mean, maybe we have maybe we have some other function that does it too, but
I don't see any reason why that shouldn't work. But what does the normal second argument do? Isn't that, I mean, shouldn't it be like a persistence location where you can say in memory or in the cloud or wherever else?
But can I ask you, like,
wait,
normal over an association which has nested associations in it, you might have to do normal more than once in order to get it to become.
Yes, but that's not our finest hour.
No, but also normal of a tabular, the thing with head tabular, like normal of an association always returns a list of rules. There might be more associations inside, but it always returns a list of rules.
My point was that normal is not always idempotent. Like, you might have to run more than once in general.
I think the problem is not idempotence. The problem is just that it's inconsistent. Like, I have a tabular, one of them turns into a list of associations, the other turns into another tabular.
Yeah, I don't think normal is a good idea. I think let's think about similar cases. I mean, local cache is the other function that tries to do, well, it's not quite like this. Import is a function that does this. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, because you were talking about the second argument of to tabular and local caches. The second argument of to tabular is a string that tells what the format of the first argument is. Is that right?
It's a control. You can give detailed commands of how things are done.
But what does it refer to? Yeah. Does it refer to what you're getting in or what you're getting out, so to speak?
I mean, what you're getting in is what you're getting in, and then how do you want it to construct the thing it generates?
Is it primarily presented as a description of what you're getting in, or is it primarily
it's relative to what you get in, but it describes what you get out.
Okay.
So then having something like to in memory or something like it, would make sense.
Yes.
Why don't I have DocuTools? Is there something broken with this build? Should I run the DocuTools installer? Hello?
Why not? I don't know.
Probably.
But I think there is something wrong with your version of this, because I didn't see those pink boxes on the same build.
Okay.
Like examples of former, yeah.
No, but this is completely the wrong thing. These are describing what is coming in, Roger.
Yeah, but they need to be detailed controls. It's just not done. You need to scroll down.
I understand that, but Roger, this is the wrong way round. Okay? This would be, something like external database or something.
But the detail, I mean, look, this is not in none of the documentation is in particularly good form right now. Can you scroll down, please?
Yeah.
See, here's like details of how to do things.
I understand,
but it's very incomplete.
Being presented here?
But it's very incomplete.
Okay.
But what's needed? Like, for instance, how do you embed a time series in Tabular? There are multiple ways of doing it if you have a vector value time series.
Okay, so look, if I look at this, clearly
you-
here, somebody is imagining, you're trying to save a transpose, basically. Right?
Yes, yeah, you're right. In that case, yes.
But the other ones here look pretty silly because the other ones have a lot of metadata already in
Right.
this symbolic
But
object.
I think the point, correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, is just that right now there's only one way of doing time series, but there might be three ways of doing time series.
Yeah, in
Like
particular when
the
you
same
have
time series can be interpreted in three different ways.
yeah, particularly when you have multi-paths like temporal data and stuff. So this is just poorly done right now. It's not done right.
I get it. But so the only question that we have to answer here is the type of thing that we're doing here, saying how to take, it sounds to me like it is consistent with, I mean, clearly it's a separate design review to look at Tabular in the things it really has to do, but it's somewhat consistent with that to be taking an out of core thing and putting it in core. That's consistent with the kind of operations that second argument is describing. Is that correct, Roger?
I think so.
Okay, so let's assume that's what's going to happen. The design isn't right yet. Recognizing that it's unfortunate there isn't an operator form, and we have to think about that. Okay, but let's wait until Tabular is better designed to finish that job. Make sense to everybody?
Just to add more confusion, it might also fit in from Tabular, not just in Tabular.
That's almost a joke, but yes, I understand.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Which kind of suggests that neither of them is the right thing, and that really what it is.
Well, I was thinking. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be a more general thing. So there is, the way Carlo's thinking out of core, it's like a fixed database that someone else provides. I was thinking about a core as, I mean, so the way we do video is like you processing, so you're generating out of core. You're,
exactly, but that was what I was saying about clouds and persistence locations and so on.
Right. And so I think that they're a little bit not all out of core.
It's more complicated because a pretty common thing might be, I've got this tabular thing, it's pretty big, I want to make it available to a group of people, I'm going to put it in the cloud, I'm going to do this or that to it. I think we don't know yet. And we should look at all the persistence locations that we're defining for anything and ask whether they make sense for Tabular.
I think there's some kind of stratification here. It's like, it's small enough, I can go in core. Or even in notebook, like I could send it along with a notebook. Or maybe it fits in our cloud, but there's going to be a lot of data stores that don't even fit in our cloud.
Yeah, right.
So there's some levels here.
Let's move on. Let's move on. I mean, clearly this is a thing we have to resolve, but that's for a separate meeting. Let's keep going here. Okay, so now you're describing this is the same syntax as standard transform columns and so on, right?
Yeah.
And you're just saying these are things that can be supported for an out-of-core database.
No, they work right now. I mean, I don't have hooks for all of them yet. Like I can't sort by isn't quite working yet, and stuff like that.
That's great.
Those work out of.
Okay, so what's some examples of things that don't work?
Well, joins don't work. Sort doesn't work.
Okay, and what do you do when it doesn't work? What do you say when it doesn't work?
I mean, right now there isn't even a way to do the error handling, but for example, one thing you can, I mean, I've inherited all the rich error handling of databases in entities, and so I can even tell you things like you're trying to compare a string to an integer.
Okay.
That's
all right. Let's just cut through, and the basic point is, what roughly should the message say? The message should basically say, you can't do this with an external database. Use whatever the thing is that localizes Tabular to in core to do this. To move the Tabular in core if you want to do this. Make sense?
I mean, it depends, because some things will not work even in core.
Why?
Because also the in-core tabular is kind of strongly typed, right? So
okay, fine, but
that's is the point that the tabular framework doesn't handle those errors itself. Like if you make a type error it still goes to, I mean, this is just sort of an implementation detail, I guess.
No, yeah, but there's different types of things. There are situations where you're trying to compute a Bessel K, and I don't know how to do Bessel K in SQL, but you might as well do that in memory. And there are cases where that operation is always going to return something nonsensical because you're
right. Okay, so Carlo, let's just keep it. Okay, clearly what we have to do is we would like to segregate the messages so that they are different depending on whether you would succeed if you brought it in core and you wouldn't succeed. If you can do that, great.
Yeah, I can.
If you,
I can.
okay, then that's the answer. Okay, that's great. Okay, let's go through these questions. What do you mean fully lazy?
So
I think if you call select, yeah, sorry, go
if you
ahead.
call select that and it's a select that you can't do you want the error right away when you evaluate the select, or only when you do to tabular?
What do you
Or
mean
when you index
can't
into
do
it? Like if you say select and you reference a column that doesn't exist, would be like the easiest case.
Okay, but
right?
what does the select return?
Another tabular, but it's a symbolic out of core tabular.
Right, because here's the point: if you're querying SQL, like you're not actually going to run the whole query when you return that new tabular, right? It's just.
I think this should indicate that, because most tabulars that you run in core run, they run immediately. They're not lazy.
So what?
I think this summary box should indicate that it hasn't yet been run.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we do that? And that also gives us an excuse to not know how many rows it has, because it's very weird to not know how many rows it has if we ran it.
Well, maybe, I mean, the first thing would be maybe they should have like a location field, which just kind of basically tells you it's not local.
Yes.
And then it could have, in addition to the location, it could have, what is the right term, like if it's a virtual table or something like that?
Yes. What is the right terminology here?
I mean, if it's kind of blurred, but it can be a table that does exist on the database, or it can be a query that is made of one or more tables and requires.
No. That's not what we're asking. What we're asking is simply, if somebody sees this, right, and it says, look, it can say location, remote, or something. But the issue is, what do we say? What are the words we use to describe the fact that the query has not yet been done? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I use lazy, but I don't know.
I don't think that's the right term.
I think in SQL, I think they use, maybe Carl, if these terms are right. The terms that I thought were used were view and virtual table.
Yeah, but view is actually saved on the database. So this is not a view.
Oh.
A view is when
I thought views were, okay, I didn't realize, I thought views were usually lazy, but I don't know what I'm talking about.
They are, but you store it.
Okay,
you
we need a
No, I understand. Yeah.
You name it and save it. You don't run it, but you save it.
Right, but it doesn't.
But isn't
run
it?
Yeah.
Aren't they called transactions? I mean,
No.
isn't it like query optimization or transaction optimization?
So a transaction is a group of one or more queries that you run together.
Have we had this issue for entities?
No, because entities are symbolic in general. So an entity class is always like lazy.
Well, maybe we use the term symbolic to represent this.
Yeah. I mean, we can say it's a symbolic query, really.
Symbolic or literal, or we need a term here. I mean, first of all, the first line should be, instead of the rows, we replace
implicit.
it with say it again?
Implicit. A symbolic is better.
I mean, you could actually says type, and it either says table or query.
I mean, we could use the nomenclature explicit, that's concrete data. Implicit, it's referred to data.
Yes.
Can we say something like unexecuted?
That's unclear what that means.
Uncommitted.
Look, okay, first point is there are going to be cases where we know the number of rows, but we haven't actually done the query. True or not true? Or if we
False.
know the number of
No.
rows, then is that
Knowing the
happen?
number of rows is actually a separate query, which is
I understand, but I'm asking as a practical matter, if we know the number of rows, can we assume that we've done the main query or not?
no, those are two separate queries.
Well, but you might have had to do most of the work of the query.
Yeah, like the select is not going to know the number of rows unless you do the select.
Right. But I think in general, there can be queries that do more work, but if you only ask for the length, it'll optimize it and it won't do as much work.
Correct.
Okay. Well, okay, so hold on.
Can we call it abstract?
How about unresolved?
Not a huge fan of unresolved.
I'm thinking of some parenthetical at the top that says.
Well, what about what about
phrase.
something where you can have two? I mean, like you could have it so it's either a table or it's a query.
I think that's obscure. I think we should simply say in words, because this is a sufficiently complicated concept and we're all confused about it, that we should just say as a gray thing of words, you know, not yet resolved or something.
I don't think resolved, I think, is really not but also not yet makes it sound like if I apply some function to it, I can get a resolved version.
Well, you can. If you apply normal to it, it'll resolve.
Wait, not normal. I mean, well, normal, I guess, will it'll resolve to a list of associations, but.
Yeah, right. But I mean, whatever
I can never get
is,
this object. I mean, I guess other than by calling toTabular of in memory, I will never get an object that looks like this that's quote unquote resolved.
Right, but I'm saying that whatever that toTabular in memory thing is, which is looking more and more like it should actually be a function that resolves things like this to make an explicit tabular.
Again, I don't think resolve is really the right
it's
term.
probably not right. Implicit.
What about pending?
Well, except that, yeah, okay.
What do we call like parallel? What are they called? Like parallel task, the whole task framework, asynchronous task stuff. What do we call task that's you haven't run parallel submit on? So it's just kind of floating.
Yeah, I think pending is used somewhat there, but I don't know. We have to look it up.
It says, oh no, it says ready for processing. It's what it says on it. It looks like.
Okay. Not explicitly something or other. Look, we need a phrase at the top that says I'm not sure. All right, let's move on. But I think, why don't we say what the heck can we call this? Implicit
delayed, deferred.
Yeah, it's not bad.
But we could have something that says data pending evaluation or something like that. So we specify that it's the data is not present instead of saying that the query is abstract. We say
How
data
about external, internal. Sorry.
Well, it's always external, right? I I mean, if it's on some database.
Yeah, but we could, if we say data not yet evaluated, and then you evaluate it, and
But how do
because-
you evaluate it? The immediate question is, well, what function do I call to evaluate it?
Right. That's the thing, is a lot of these sound like, oh, it's a problem. Like before I continue, I have to fix this. And there's no function you can call that will give you a version that looks the same, except that it doesn't say
because the thing is that those boxes that you see there, they're the same boxes you would get for an in-core tabular when dynamic evaluation is off. So there is also a version of this that would show up for an in-core tabular.
Well, it happens to look more or less the same, but
yeah, but you could have something that says data present in memory, in notebook, in memory, or not present.
okay, so one possibility is something like data not. See, data not present sounds like an error.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, you could say data external.
No, but again, it's always external, right?
It's not always external.
Well, no, but like if it's coming from a database,
internal to the kernel.
No, but it's either way, it's external to the kernel, right? I mean, if it's a table on some database, some Postgres database that someone else is hosting, it's external to the kernel, even if it's a table, it's not a query.
Yeah,
But once
we
you
don't know
import
whether
it and
it's
bring it
a
in
query or a
memory, then
table.
it's internal.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
Right,
I
but the
think
distinction here is not whether it's in memory or out of memory. It's whether it's a table on the database or if it's a query.
But no, I don't think that distinction is very meaningful here.
How about something like data not yet computed?
I like that. Or not fetched.
Actually, I think not computed is nice because it suggests that if you're going to get an error, you wouldn't have gotten it yet because it hasn't even run it.
So are we more for fully lazy or partly lazy? When do you want to see the errors?
Dan is on our live stream is suggesting data not available in memory, but I don't think that's what this is, right? This
Yes.
is not yet, the query has not yet been run. It's not just that it isn't available in memory, it's that the query hasn't even been run.
Right. Like if I just reference some table on this database, it's also not in memory.
All right,
Or
so
not in
look,
memory on my machine.
do we want to say data not yet completed or query not yet computed?
I would say query. Because the data might be computed, you just have to fetch it. Like
Or maybe executed.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah, it's better.
I think that's reasonable. Let's go with that for the time being. Query not yet executed.
Okay.
And so for partial versus fully lazy, I mean, is there a downside to being partially lazy, like that it'll be slower or something?
Yeah.
Or is it
like
free?
if fully lazy is like completely instantaneous, partially lazy, you have to do some legwork that you can reuse later. I mean, it has some advantages in that, for example, you can show the types. If you perform a partial compilation, you can say what the types of the columns coming out are without
Oh,
performing.
right. Yeah, like if I query, because Tabular you can ask it for the column types, right?
Yeah.
So what is it, even if it was fully lazy, would it then, when you ask for the column types, would it fail or would it do a bunch of work when you ask for that?
We haven't decided yet.
I suggest these two possibilities. Query specified but not yet executed, query specified but not yet fully executed. Is that reasonable?
I don't know what the fully does there, but yeah.
Okay, fine. Well, then that's irrelevant.
I mean, the fully might only mean something if we do the partial lazy
Exactly. That's what I was
route.
dealing with there.
But
Yeah, but
Okay,
it's still,
look, query
still like
specified
the
but
query is, in that case, it's compiled but not executed at all. Right. So
Okay, fine. But then let's say query specified but not yet executed for the time being. If we
Mhm.
hate it, then we'll simplify it. But let's start with that. Make sense?
Yeah.
And in gray and parens underneath here, I think.
Okay.
Or maybe it's at the very top if we have to have an open down there.
I think we will
Okay.
have to for the column names.
Yeah, we'll have an opener for the column names. Okay, what do we do with foreign keys?
Well, we didn't answer the thing before, really, whether it's fully or partly lazy. Like, when do we want the error messages to appear? If you do a select,
I think it should appear immediately. I think it's very frustrating when error messages don't appear. I think compilation to SQL is not particularly slow. I think we should do it.
okay.
I mean, does it, if I have a whole workflow and I run it, will it change the speed that the whole thing runs at to do the partial versus the fully?
No, we're gonna do memoization and so on. Yeah.
Fine. Yeah, then why not?
If not,
Okay.
or maybe even store the partially compiled thing within the tabular expression.
Yeah, I mean, you're not expected to open the tabular expression yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, what do we do with foreign keys?
So I like the work we have done with entities, like which is basically grandfather from how built-in entities work, that some properties are entity valued. And that lets you forget about joins for the most part, because you just follow those foreign keys.
What would it actually look like? I'm not sure I understand. I mean, so in other words, you've got a database, you've got a relational database which has foreign keys in some table.
Yeah.
And those foreign keys would show up as entity. What would they show up as?
As tabular row. Entities are tabular row.
So wait a minute.
And
so
class are tabulars.
Then in the database, in table 1, what you would actually see is tabular row, blah, blah, blah.
Actually, if you scroll that normal thing that you have up top, you can see some columns that are tabular row.
Which thing?
Further. That one there, the one with the
here?
headers. Yeah, scroll right. Yep. Well, tabulars, not tabular rows. Yeah, those are probably the employees that work out of that office. So there's more than one per office.
So wait a minute. So what are you seeing here? So in other words, I have a tabular, and if I want to drill further down into that, I use standard tabular accessor functions. Looks great.
But also, what you can do is, like, if you scroll down again to that example, so that entity function applies to an entity of type customer. Each customer has a sales representative. That sales representative is employees. And then you can get the first name of the sales representative, and then you can drill even further and get the boss of the sales representative.
I understand, but what is this thing? Why is there an entity function?
Because this was the syntax we had for entities. Like, do we want to do that for tabular as well? In that case, it would just be
What's the name of the, I mean, in the case of entities, there's always an entity type. What is that here? Is that a table name?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is diving, deep into the whatever, into the, this is submerging into details here. I mean, if we can implement this easily, then we should have this. We may yet want to clean it and change some names and so on later.
Yeah.
I mean, the first cut, if this comes for free, we should absolutely take it.
Yeah, that comes pretty much for free. The thing that doesn't exactly come for free is the fact that entity class and tabular are like slightly different in terms of how the subvalues work. So you for the entity class ones here, you would have to add all, comma, the thing. So it's different the way you access the subvalues.
I don't think we're going to want to call it entity function.
No, it's not called entity function. It's called function here. It's just a function. It's not an entity function.
Well, I don't understand. Why do you say entity? Why does it say entity function here?
Because I copied an example from the documentation that was something that would require two joins to do. It's just an example that I had from a marketing page. I didn't bother.
I don't understand. So what you're basically saying is, I mean, the issue is you've got a tabular inside here, but is that tabular sort of sub-referencing some small piece of the tabular, or is it the whole tabular? Is it a whole tabular?
No, okay. So employees here, C employees is a single tabular row. So for each customer, you have one employee who's the sales representative of that customer. So it's a one row.
Okay. Can you answer the following question? In this thing up here, are these?
Oh, that thing up there, it's a select on that tabular because it's only the employees that work out of the San Francisco office in the first case.
Okay, all right, okay. That's the answer to the question. Is it's a select of a tabular?
Yes.
Right. Which is basically one of these things that we've defined here, a query specified but not yet executed.
Yes.
Which would return a tabular. So there could be this is in fact correctly represented as a tabular, but it's not the whole tabular that represented that table in the relational database. It's a tabular that has been filtered by a query of some kind.
Yes.
What does normal do?
Oh. It has to resolve it.
No,
it can't resolve it more than depth one.
Well, actually, normal of that returns data columns, an association of data columns, I think.
Okay. I thought normal. I don't think this is our most important thing to resolve right now. I think you should do the thing.
The point is that you can't recursively resolve all those things because in full generality, you'll get an infinite loop.
Okay, I think we need to have examples we can actually run and so on. I think what you're doing right now with putting these tabulars here, which are selected tabulars, seems to make sense to me. I don't really understand this.
Okay, on Thursday I'll have examples that work with that.
Okay. All right.
Well, actually, if you want, you can type one yourself out of that example if you want to try it right away.
Okay, I'll try it right now. This one here.
Okay. No. Type this. Construct columns. Okay. Then type tabular.
Tabular or tab?
No, tabular with a capital T. Open square bracket. List. Schema. Comma. Customers. Comma relational database. Exit the square bracket, comma, quotes, sentence.
What?
Like phrase, it's a phrase. I don't know, X, whatever, just a string. It's just going to be the name of the column. Just X in a string. Yeah, whatever. Goes to, and then copy that entity function above and replace the head entity function with function. Okay, now do / normal, yeah, with lowercase. No, not lowercase normal. That doesn't work. Yeah.
Well, I want to cut all the crap out of this. I mean, construct columns. Okay. Can we just cut all this garbage out and just let me see something simple here?
Yeah, sure. Just remove, just keep the first name.
This thing here, right?
Yeah.
By the way, those messages.
This is why variable names are worth using, but
Okay, let me understand this. Okay. Okay, so this is getting applied to.
Customers.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is getting applied to this. So let's get that object there. Oh, for God's sake! How do I see this?
Normal. Normal.
Which normal?
Lowercase normal.
We're going to need a function that does this. It's not going to be a two tabular thingy dingy. Okay.
So if you scroll to the right, there's going to be a column called employees.
Okay. What's that? What's that thing there? What's that?
Oh,
X,
those are.
I think it's an expression.
It's an expression. Yeah.
So we were supposed to have a list of those all those icons, and we were supposed to discuss putting the icons in the top right hand corner.
Yes,
think this
but
build
Jason,
hasn't-
Jason A had a family emergency, so we
Also,
postponed that.
also, this build was built before we discussed this. So, I mean, even if he didn't have a family emergency, it's physically impossible that there are any changes here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Fine. But so this is now a tabular row. Can I get one of those out? Does
You
that?
can run normal, right? Actual normal. If you want to see what it is.
No, you
Yeah, I
can
know,
do
but I
it.
just wanna
You can
get- I
get
just
it
wanna
by
get it-
with. Oh, wait. Steven, do one open square bracket after the normal, one comma employees, and you get the first.
Okay. Hold on. After this thing here, percent sub one comma employees. Is that correct?
You got to use some variables. This is very confusing. Like,
Yep.
Okay. Now I can say ordinary normal, right?
I don't know. No, because that's still SQL based. I hope that works. No,
What's
that's not set up yet. Sorry.
How do I get that tabular row resolved?
I don't think you can with this build.
Okay. It's clear we're going to need a function that does what this normal thing does. We're not going to have it as some side door to two tabular. It's something like tabular
Absolutely.
resolve or some
I absolutely
tabular.
agree.
I mean, could we have like an in-core, two-core, something like that accepts more than just tabulars?
Possibly, yeah.
well, first, what is the operation? Is the operation that it brings it in memory or onto your computer? It brings it in memory, right?
Yes.
Usually, yes.
In memory. Though there might be a version of this that brings it to a Parquet cache file.
Okay.
I don't think it's
This
that
is the
common.
analog of entity value, which resolves
Yes.
entities, right?
Yes.
And it's
Ooh.
not very good. No, it's a bad idea.
No, that is.
That's also a bad idea.
Memorize would be a funny name.
Refine.
How about tabular evaluate?
No, it's not necessarily evaluating anything. It might just be downloading something, right? And also tabular evaluate sounds like, yeah, no, I mean, it sounds like something like that you do to make something evaluate.
Yeah. Well, okay. How do I get this? Okay. I
Well,
don't
did you try
really-
the copy thing? Right, it offered you a copy, right?
This here.
Oh, I see. We got the tabular row. Yeah.
I don't think any copy pasting on tabulars works on this build.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Tabular row. What do we do with it?
I mean, tabular row, when
How do I
not,
get the first element of that tabular row?
you
Can-
right, you can't right now. There's no. It's not plugged in. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. Okay. Fine.
I can't do it.
Okay. Fine. So we'll look at this another time. But basically, what's happening here is these are references to pieces of a tabulars, pieces of another tabular They're explicit symbolic references to another tabular,
Yeah.
aka foreign keys. And the issue is when we are doing something like this, we're taking that tabular that's there and we're indexing like this. So if I say,
If we did capital normal on %18, would we then be able to extract the
No,
depth
it's
of the
just
row?
not plugged in for lazy
because it
tabular
isn't
rows.
imported
It's like
yet.
can't work. Can't work. Sorry.
But by the way, in this visual form, if it's not in memory, we've got to indicate that somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. But again,
How are we
that's
going to indicate it?
with the same thing as before, query not blah. I think it's the same thing.
Possibly. Or we could do something. We're doing this for the percent references, some kind of Wi-Fi looking icon. I could imagine using that square up there to indicate some kind of remote Wi-Fi looking icon.
Well, on the other hand, I think like I personally don't love the fact that these columns become of type expression where we know much more about them. Like that column is of type really dressed up foreign
Okay,
key.
that's not a relevant point to what I'm saying. I'm saying there has to be a visual indication on here that this is remote data. Can we address that particular point? Right, this whole thing is remote, correct?
Wait, no, that's not remote.
It is the output of normal, so it's supposed to not be.
Oh,
No,
okay.
but
So you're
those
saying that it
values
never
are
looks this way. It never shows this explicitness in the case where it's remote. No, it can't because it doesn't know enough.
Yeah, but this is still partially resolved, and those columns are remote.
Okay, let's. Okay. We've Okay. All right. We're running out of time here. So can we take a look at the other items here, please?
Christopher just put a comment about suggestions for tabular in memory, but yet again, I kind of like both fetch and execute over like resolve and evaluate.
Yeah, I think fetch is okay.
Fetch is okay.
Materialize isn't terrible, but it's a little weird.
Materialize? Only for Star Trek.
I like materialize.
Rayify. Fetch is very weird because I was favoring import tabular.
It's just not clear. I mean, it's like import string, import byte array, import tabular.
You're right.
Maybe we should look at the next section where I do import
Right.
of data connection to object.
Okay. Let's take a look at this.
It's a bit wordy to say that essentially this should be a high level way to get connected to data that, regardless of its backend implementation. So I picked good examples for a C++ backend, Service Connect API, and started from there.
Right, let's just take a look at how this works. Do I run this? Oh, for God's sake.
Sure.
Have we not finished with general utilities? I thought we were getting rid of everything in there.
I just liked the formatting from a pretty print function.
Which formatting of what?
If you scroll down a little bit, I use it.
We've moved the non-controversial bits of it into
Can we
other
can we
places.
try an ILD or LCC to look at all the other ones? Because clearly if people are still using it, it's got useful things in it.
By the way, that pretty print thing, I think the compiler uses a modified version of that now for its errors. So yes, that formatter is still used.
So let's look at bringing that in more at least into a WFR. Okay, in any case, be this as it may, what's happening here?
This is giving the specification for where some remote data is located. So before, it was a bit more generalized, and you asked for kind of a flat association where we just have some keys to give
Yep.
the specification for those remote objects. That's what this looks like. And
Looks
then also,
lovely.
you know, has the caching and authentication implemented. Everything should work here. Well, I
Will
guess
it
maybe
actually
not in
work?
this build.
Will it actually work?
Yeah, let's try it.
Is the fact the access secret is on screen, is that a problem?
Well, probably.
Access secret has an uncompressed there.
Yes, that makes it very secure.
Luckily,
No, that's not
this
very
is
secure.
Okay, well,
this
maybe
is
let's
dummy
not
data
talk
that's
about it.
hardly. I made sure that this is data that isn't sensitive, and that account doesn't have access to modify it.
Fine.
Aren't you gonna pay a ton of egress when all our fans try to download it?
Okay. Import.
So that resulting
So-
tabular is in memory, right?
Yep.
So this
So-
is a new first argument for import that is a data connection object.
Yep.
Is that right? So in principle,
a-
my data connection object could contain a giant GIF or something.
Yeah, it's just a reference to some data somewhere. It could be remote. Eventually, it could be local. It's not implemented yet.
Okay, but what I'm
The point
asking
being,
is
though,
the
it can
second
generally be a
argument.
file.
But yes, it is
Well,
not specific to tabular at all. This
Right,
is
but there's
yeah.
no MIME type here. I mean, or is there? In the data connection object, is it giving the analog of a MIME type that allows import to know what kind of thing it's supposed to import? Sean, do you understand my question?
I need to think for a second.
Okay.
Right now, it's mainly giving access to the file. I'm not caching any information about its format and whatnot, but those things seem like implementation details that would be promoted to features when
but
they
it's-
become useful.
But the location says .parquet, right? Country-codes.parquet.
Right. And data connection object always caches a file.
Okay.
So
but
even
that
if it's from
file
a relational
has a
database.
type.
Yes. But so if you have like a relational database example in the next section, it'll still cache the resulting query as a Parquet file, relational database.
Oh,
So
is that
the
what
resulting
it is?
query is cached as a Parquet file, but the user is never exposed to that file.
So
I
because it's
understand,
cast
but
in
my
separate
point
files,
is
so on.
that this framework, if I just stored a bunch of GIFs in a S3 bucket or something, right?
Yep, it'll already import those GIFs. It'll already work.
But don't we already have another mechanism for that? This external data.
Oh, so there's an external storage download, which is a procedural download the file, import the file kind of thing. This is a symbolic reference to data.
And what's the relationship? Are those formats consistent?
Oh, which format? Sorry.
External data, external storage download.
You mean like the syntax for it? Is it
Yeah,
consistent?
yeah.
Yes, for the most part. But this is also supposed to be a more elegant, more, well-refined version
Well,
of that,
I don't care, but
think.
we've already got that other function, so we need to make sure we maintain consistency.
It's rather experimental and messy.
Well, it doesn't say it's experimental.
Doesn't? Yes, it does in the top right.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. All right.
This was kind of a hacky thing that was invented for a specific use case.
Okay, but then we've got to clean it up. If what you've built here is a nice clean version, let's backport that into external storage download. And presumably external storage download should be able to take a data connection object. What's the relationship? Or are we retiring external storage download because it is the set? But we've also got external storage upload and so on, right? And I don't think we have export to a data connection object, do we?
No.
Oh, we don't really imagine that, do we?
I don't think so at this point.
Okay.
Having this work with external storage download doesn't seem completely crazy to me, but it's not something that I've looked into as in detail.
Fair
But
enough. Okay.
yeah.
So then data connection object is a symbolic reference that is beyond a file, so to speak, beyond the URI. And it's beyond a URI for what reason? Because it has authentication, it has what else does it? And it is an external storage object. Now, don't we
Well,
have
often external storage needs a query language. I mean,
what's external storage object? We got to look at this. Okay.
no,
It's
I meant to say the data, the way you connect to a data store, the way you locate what you want there is often in a query language.
I got it.
Okay.
Which external storage object doesn't really support. It just says you've got this essentially URI. Now, how do you get to it?
And this was built rather specifically for like IPFS in Amazon S3. When I was going about data connection object, I was trying to make things as general as possible.
Great. But, we don't just leave functions out there to rot. We're either going to update this or we're going to, deprecate it or something. It doesn't just sit out there rotting.
Absolutely. The intention is to get this out, start using it, and when it's an obvious replacement, probably deprecate this. Or if
Okay,
there's
but
still a need for these,
let's
then
look at it more
we'll hook it up.
carefully, because we've also got things like external storage upload. We've got a whole system here around external storage, and I don't think we should just throw it away. Now, I'm a little bit confused. Okay, so for another time, let's do an analysis of the relationship between them. Okay. I also think,
and I think that Julio being here for that would be a great thing. He's worked on this actually.
Great. I think this is not exactly ancient. This is 2020.
Again, I think it was rapidly developed for some other purpose.
Wasn't that rapid? I remember what happened with it. It was actually hanging out for quite a few years, and it finally made it into the system.
I think this was we developed in the machine learning team for S3 storage, I think.
Among other things, yeah, and the blockchain team for IPFS and so on.
Oh, okay.
It had multiple users.
Okay.
I have to admit that I've never used it, which is a bad sign. And I also realized that in the persistence framework, I don't think we properly connected this to the persistence location framework, which is also something to worry about for data connection object. Am I making sense? Sean, you know about that, right?
I mean, I've looked at persistent symbol and whatnot. The
so
UX for how this thing is persistent between sessions is something that's been in the back of my mind, and I haven't quite proposed anything yet, but I could right now, essentially, if you want to use your existing cache, you'd kind of have to like copy the resulting object and then like paste that as an input somewhere. And I can almost imagine a button similar to like store data in this notebook that kind of preserves the object or something like that. Because ideally we want this at the top of the notebook to refresh the data at the start.
Also, the data connection could very much be an API. Let's say that you have...
I agree.
Yeah, all kinds of APIs, actually. But Amazon store account or something like that.
Right, but okay. Look, data connection object is potentially the new URL in some sense. Just like you can import from a URL, so you can import from a data connection object. And it could be dynamic, it could be a blob of data that's already there, it could be data that has a certain MIME type, all those kinds of things.
As general as possible and intended to grow.
Yes. I do wonder about export to these things, and I think that's worth thinking through. Whether it's the same data connection object that, let's say you have a connection to some S3 thing, why not just use export to data connection object?
Now, that seems reasonable, yeah.
The question is, does external storage object have a life or is it completely subsumed by data connection object? I mean, there's quite a lot there in external storage put, external storage get, all these kinds of things. We need to understand what all of those are. Makes sense?
I think that more general functions in the language, like just put and get, could just work on data connection object, and it
That would be
kind
nice.
of cleans things up.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's just
Because
generalize
putting-
this thing and make it like it's a symbolic name for something that we didn't have a name for before, and ended up
Well,
having
we
great
did, but
functions
we
that did
didn't
the
build
specific
it out
things.
properly. I mean, the name we had before was external storage object, but we didn't build it out properly. Yeah. All right. Well, that's to be looked at, and also just look at what would it take to have a persistence location be a data connection object, i.e., the persistence location is, and I don't know whether this makes sense, a particular S3 bucket. See what I'm saying? Just like a persistence location can be the cloud, in which case it gets a specific cloud object ID, could it be something where you are persisting on it, for example, an external cloud? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'll look into it.
Okay.
I
Sounds
think
good.
that makes a lot of sense, because the advantage of leveraging the built clouds is the scale.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's like
I agree.
infinite scale.
So maybe this is a generalization of, external storage object, and notice this is storing images there and so on. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff here that we need to look at. Okay, good stuff. Anything else that we need to cover?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
All right. Talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.
Okay.